very much, Agnès, and many thanks to the organizer for the invitation. This is going to be a talk about matrix factorization for data processing and with some applications in imaging. So I will start by giving an overview of matrix factorization models for data processing, and in particular an overview of non-negative matrix factorization. In particular, we will discuss the measure of fit on which non-negative matrix factorization NMF relies, and the importance of choosing the right measure of fit for the data and application at hand. In terms of optimization, I will present the concept of majorization, minimization, which is dominant in optimization for NMF. And then in a third part, I will present two types of applications in imaging. So I'm not an expert of these applications, but I will mainly present some work that I've made with some of my colleagues at IRIT who are experts in hyperspectral unmixing for remote sensing, and also about factor analysis for dynamic PET imaging. So, as you know, in many settings, you can organize data into a matrix in which columns are going to be samples and rows are features. So you can think, for example, of ratings given by users to movie in Netflix or other streaming interfaces. You can think of counts of words appearing in a corpus of document in text information retrieval. And you can think also of a spectrogram, which is the time frequency representation of a signal such as a sound. And in many cases, processing of such data entails finding a factorization, usually a low-rank approximation of the original data X into the product of two matrices referred to dictionary and activations. And this representation, each sample, that is to say a column of X, is approximated as a linear combination of recurring patterns that are extracted from the data into the dictionary, and with activation coefficients corresponding to the nth column of the same column of H. So there are mainly three applications of matrix factorizations, I would say. So the first one is simply dimensionality reduction, where you want to find a low-rank approximation of your original data, for example, for coding or for efficient computation of similarity measures between samples, meaning that instead of computing inner products, for example, between this potentially large matrix, you can use inner products between the columns of the activation matrix. This is a common setting. Another setting, which is very close to compression, is unmixing. And in the applications of this talk, we will look at this particular application. So in that case, you really want to find some meaning in the factorization. And typically, if your data is composite data, meaning that your data is a superposition of some kind of latent variable, you can expect that the factorization is going to separate and extract the elementary patterns into the columns of W, and H is going to be to represent the proportions in which these patterns are sampled, are mixed into the data. And finally, a third application is matrix completion, for example, for collaborative filtering. If this is a matrix containing ratings given to movies, for example, it's going to be a matrix with many missing entries, and the goal of matrix completion is to predict the missing entries given, for example, this latent low-rank approximation. And I will give an example also in the applications. So these matrix factorization models have been around for a very long time, and you know many instances such as PCA, ICA, KSVD, latent directly allocation, etc. And today we will focus more particularly on non-negative matrix factorization. So the specificity of NMF is that it's a matrix factorization setting for non-negative data. So this means that the data matrix V, so there's a slight change of notation, the matrix data is going to be V, contains non-negative values. Okay, so it means that each value of the matrix is non-negative. This has nothing to do with semi-definite positiveness. Okay, it just means that the entries are non-negative. And in NMF, you want to approximate V into the product of two non-negative matrices. So the non-negativity of the dictionary W is going to ensure that the patterns that you are going to extract belong to the same space of the data, meaning that you can interpret the patterns, something that PCA, for example, is not going to guarantee because it does not enforce non-negativity. And the non-negativity of H tends to produce so-called par-based representation because you cannot subtract patterns to form an approximation of the samples. The non-negativity on H will tend to produce building units in the dictionary, and these building units are often parts of the data. So NMF has been very popular in three applications in particular. The first one is latent semantic analysis in text information retrieval. So in that setting, the columns of V are bags of words. You count the number of occurrences of words into documents. For example, here, this represents a bag of word representation of one entry of an encyclopedia. And when you factorize this matrix, you can expect to extract in the dictionary correlation between specific words that will express topics. So this has been very popular, and this is called also topic modeling. Another application in which I've worked a lot is audio spectral unmixing for audio source separation, for example. So the principle here is to decompose a spectrogram into a dictionary of elementary spectral patterns and activation of these patterns. For example, in this matrix, you have the spectrogram of a short piano sequence composed of 4 notes. And this is a polyphonic recording, meaning that the notes are superimposed. And NMF, on such a simple example, in a non-supervised way, can automatically extract the spectra of the individual notes. And you can see that in the row of H here, you obtain the activation of the individual nodes. And this very simple setting has been augmented in many variants and more sophisticated models to produce state-of-the-art results in source separation or polyphonic transcription. Okay, and now closer to imaging, another third application in which NMF has been very popular is hyperspectral indexing. So for remote sensing. So in that setting, you have a sensor, usually an airborne sensor, that is going to analyze the spectrum of the light which is reflected by the sun, for example, by a land scene. And the analysis of this spectra can lead to the identification of the materials that compose the observed scene. And because the spatial resolution can be limited, you will measure in the spectra, in some cases, in some pixels, a linear mixture of contribution of elementary spectra, and NMF can unmix the contribution of these elementary spectra in these particular pixels. So I will get back to that in the applications. Okay, so now let's have a look at how we actually obtain NMF given some non-negative data. So NMF is very often cast as an optimization problem in which you give yourself a measure of fit between your original data V and the approximation W times H. This measure of fit is usually an entry-wise measure of fit. So you're going to measure the discrepancy between coefficient Fn and the coefficient Fn in its approximation, and you sum over all columns and rows. And many measures of fit have been considered in NMF. This is partly due to the fact that the standard quadratic cost, which underlies an additive Gaussian noise, is not a very natural choice for non-negative data. And so many other divergences have been considered. And we will focus on this specific beta divergence in the rest of the talk. And of course, so this is like the vanilla NMF problem. In many settings, you are going to add some regularization terms that will express some particular structure that you want to enforce, such as sparsity, smoothness, etc. And also, an important problem of this optimization problems is that it's a non-convex problem because of the bilinearity W times H in the approximation. And this is an important bottleneck, and there's a lot of ongoing research on this specific problem, how to find global solutions, or at least characterize the nature of the global solutions. So as I said, many divergences have been considered for NMF, and the question is how to find the right measure of fit for your problem. So first, as a first insight, you can see a probabilistic correspondence between specific divergences and a probabilistic model. So more precisely, if you assume a probabilistic model for your data parameterized by W times H such that the model is mean parameterized, meaning that the expectation of the data in the model is simply W times H. And if you assume conditional independence, then the following correspondences apply, meaning that in many cases, the measure of fit, the divergence, is a log likelihood in disguise. Okay, so a very standard case that everybody knows is the correspondence between additive Gaussian noise and the quadratic cost, squared Euclidean. But there are also other well-known correspondences. In particular, in imaging, Poissonian likelihoods are often used, and these correspond to the so-called generalized Keil divergence. In topic modeling and text information retrieval, multinomial distributions are quite popular. This is, for example, behind latent directly allocation or PLSA. In spectral analysis, the Itakura-Saito divergence has been shown to lead to accurate results, at least more accurate than other divergences, and this underlies a multiplicative gamma noise. And the beta divergence that I will introduce in the next slide is interesting because it generalizes all these divergences, and it corresponds to a less known distribution called the 2D distribution. So the beta divergence, which has been quite popular in NMF, in particular because it takes these three well-known cases as special cases, is given by this expression. So it's a polynomial expression. So it's defined for beta real valued, and it takes two limit cases for beta equals 1 and beta equals 0, which are the so-called generalized Keil divergence and the so-called Itakura-Saito divergence for beta equals 0. So it has these specific properties. It has this interesting relation to scale. If you rescale x and y by lambda, then you have this relation. And in particular, you can see that the Itakura-Saito divergence is the only divergence to be scale invariant. So it's going to give the same importance to all data coefficients in the matrix V, which is not the case, for example, for the squared Euclidean distance or the Kullback-Leibler divergence. The divergence is convex with respect to y given x for beta between quadratic cost and Keil divergence. And also, you can show that it's a special case of Bregman divergence. So it looks like that. So this is the divergence as a function of y for x equal 1. So this is just the quadratic cost, beta equals 2. The Keil divergence, beta equals 1. So this is still convex. This is beta equals 0, Itakura-Saito divergence. So it becomes, you can see that it becomes non-convex. There is an inflection point here at y equals 2x. And this is how it looks when beta goes to minus infinity. Well, this is minus 1 here. And when beta increases. OK, so from now on, we're going to do NMF with this beta divergence. And I will show that you can derive an algorithm for NMF with this unifying beta divergence. So based on majorization minimization. And we are going to use a very common algorithm design, which is simply alternate minimization between W and H. So you iterate between W and H. Of course, by simple transposition, you can see that the updates of the dictionary W and the activation matrix H are equivalent. So we may look, for example, at the problem of estimating H given W. Given the specific structure of the measure of fit, which is separable, you can see that the optimization of H given W separates as n optimization problems over the columns of H. So it's basically a non-negative linear regression, which is a well-known problem, which has been studied intensively, in particular in image restoration. For example, when W is like a blurring matrix. And in particular, the quadratic cost and the Keil divergent cases have been well studied. And we will here show that you can derive an algorithm, a unifying algorithm for all the beta divergence. And again, I stress that this is a non-convex problem, and so that initialization is an issue. And for all the results I will show later, we basically do random starts from many initialization points and pick up the solution that leads to the smallest objective function value. So as I said, I'm going to derive a majorization minimization algorithm for NMF with the beta divergence. So the concept of majorization minimization, MM, has been here for a long time. It's very simple. I like it a lot. It's very easy to explain, and it does not depend on any tuning parameter. So assume you need to optimize this cost function C of H. So this is just a scalar illustration. What you are going to do is, give yourself an initialization, build an upper bound, a tight upper bound of this objective function around the current estimate. And provided you can do it, minimize this upper bound, which is going to give you this new estimate H1, and you are going to iterate. You build another upper bound in H1, etc. You minimize and you continue until you converge to a stationary point or critical point. So, of course, the question is, can you do it for your problem? Meaning, can you build a workable upper bound that you can then minimize? So the answer is yes for NMF with the beta divergence. And so just to give you a flavor of how it works, this is the objective function you need to minimize for the specific case of the Ithakura Saito divergence, so specific case of the beta divergence. And you can see that the objective function is the sum of a convex term and a concave term, and basically the ID. And these two terms involve these HK parameters of which you want to optimize, and the idea is that you are going to split these sums over over K within the 1 over x and the log function, and you can do that using Jensen inequalities for the convex term and just using the tangent inequality for the concave term. And when you do that, you obtain a workable upper bound, and this works for all the beta divergence, this idea of splitting the convex and concave term. And when you do the majorization and then the minimization, which becomes easy to do also, it's workable, it's tractable, I mean, you obtain an algorithm which is called a multiplicative algorithm. It has this nice structure. Basically, what the algorithm gives you is an update where you update the current value of HK by multiplying it by the ratio of two non-negative functions. So it means that if you have initialized with strictly positive value, you preserve non-negativity throughout the iterations. And interestingly, for the beta divergence, these two terms here are actually related to the gradient with respect to H. And you can see that basically, if the gradient is positive, so you want to go on the left, so it means that this ratio is going to be lesser than 1, so you do update your parameter towards the left. Okay, so that's it for the methodological part. So now we are going to look at a couple of applications. So these are collaborations with people from our lab, and in particular with Nicolas Debijon. So first, we are going to have a look at an hyperspectral unmixing problem. And in this first experiment, we are going to do matrix completion. So we are going to take two hyperspectral cubes that we unfold, so meaning that we ignore the spatial structure and we just unfold the tensor into a matrix. And to check whether this beta parameter in the divergence has any importance, we are going to remove randomly some entries from the matrix and do matrix completion using the solution returned by NMF. So it's very easy to adapt the algorithm that I've presented to the case where you have missing entries. And we are going to reconstruct the missing entries from the estimated W and H. So the product W times H is going to be used to reconstruct the missing value, and we are going to measure the discrepancy between the original data and the reconstruct data by measuring basically the angle between the original data and the approximation. So this is what it gives you. So first column is one data set, second column is the other data set. X-axis is the value of beta, of this beta divergence, so between -1 and 3. Y-axis is the accuracy. Okay. So basically you can see that choosing beta matters. The accuracy is going to variate with the value of beta. And that basically for one data set the performance is quite similar for all values of beta between 0 and 2, and it's a bit more sensitive in the other hyperspectral matrix. And that basically, from these two data sets, recommended value would be beta around 1.5, which is actually a compromise between a Poisson model and an additive noise model. Now, so still in hyperspectral mixing, but different problem. As a matter of fact, it has been shown that this linear mixing model entailed by NMF is true for most pixels, but not every pixel. And the physics can tell you that in some pixels, you have some specific interaction between some components. And these specific interactions could reasonably well be modeled by an additive term. Okay? So you still have your low rank contribution plus a sort of residual term that is going to model this so-called nonlinear phenomena. So many people had proposed some forms of some parametric forms for Rn inspired by physics. And with my colleague Nicolas Debijon, we took a different approach. Starting from the idea that these nonlinear effects in an hyperspectral cube, they actually only trigger, they only active for a few pixels. So what we propose to do is to model these nonlinear interactions by such as like sparse outliers. Okay, so we assume that we do not assume a specific parametric form, but we simply assume that these nonlinearity occur sparsely in the cube, and we solve this problem where we impose some a group sparsity constraint on R, meaning that many columns in R are going to be 0, and when a pixel does present a nonlinearity, all the corresponding column in R is going to be active. And again, you can minimize this objective function with majorization, minimization, and it leads also to multiplicative updates in that setting as well. So this is one result. So this is a black and white projection of an hyperspectral image. And we are going to unmix a small part of this image. So using this robust NMF variant I've presented. So on these three figures, on these three plots, you can see the spectra estimated by NMF for beta equals 1 or beta equals 2. They are actually very, very close in that setting. And these are the activation maps of these three components. So this is like vegetation, water, soil. And here I display the energy of the outlier term that is present in the model. And you can see that it becomes active in pixels where you have an interaction between water and soil. And this is a known fact that for such elements, the linear model does not really apply. So basically, the method is able to identify this by itself. So it was a nice result. This is a second result. So this is a forested area. So the structures are less clear, but the experts know that you actually characterize some spectra that are representative of chestnut trees, oak trees, and another component which was not known from the scene. And in that case, the outlier component apparently captures some patterns which are due to sensor miscalibration. So this is less conclusive, but this is what the experts believe. Okay, and finally, so a second application which was which is much newer to me. So factor analysis in dynamical PET imaging. So the principle here is, so this is a 3D functional imaging technique in which you want to monitor the activity of the brain in that case. And so you inject a radio tracer to a patient. So the radio tracer is a biomarker of a specific compound that you want to identify in the brain. And in that case, the data Vn is the so-called time activity curve of the brain in all voxels, which are indexed by n. Okay, and you know that when you do neuroimaging, that these so-called TAC curves are going to be the mixed contributions of 4 elements: blood, white matter, and two other components. So a component which corresponds to the gray matter, which is going to react to the tracer that has been injected. So this is a specific gray matter, S is specific, and non-specific gray matter. So these are the voxels in the gray matter that are not reacting to this tracer. Okay, so what you're really interested is to identify where are these these voxels which react to the tracer are active. So this is called a specific binding signature. And this specific binding signature has a characteristic, which is that its signature is not homogeneous in the brain. It is a space voxel variant. And so these co-authors have proposed a model in which you assume that the signature for this specific component is going to be variant in space. So this is what this delta n is modeling here. And you can further assume that this variability can be expressed itself as a sort of low-rank approximation, where D is a sort of sub-dictionary that characterizes this variability, and which can be either pre-trained using label data or simulated data, meaning that D is assumed to be fixed, and Bn is estimated. So you see that again, in this model, Vn is decomposed as a low-rank part, so like pure NMF, plus a residual term which has a specific structure, and which is given by this equation. So now you have to solve this optimization problem, so with respect to WH and B, which is again given this group structure, which means that only a few voxels will exhibit such variability because not all the voxels are going to react to this tracer. And same story, you can do that using majorization minimization for all the values of beta. So an example which will conclude my talk. So these are results obtained from a real dynamic PET image of a subject who suffered a stroke. And so he was injected a tracer for neuroinflammation. And so you have here a ground truth visualization of where the stroke occurred in various planes of the brain. On these figures, you have so the activation map of the specific binding component obtained with 3 values of beta. So this beta divergence, 0, so Itakura Saito, 1, KL divergence, 2 quadratic cost. And here you have the map of this B matrix here, which indicates where the variability of this specific binding component occurred. So and you can see that in that case, beta equals 0 seems to give the most accurate results, at least from the expert point of view. Okay, so this concludes my talk. So I have also a postdoc position, like everybody apparently, to advertise. Conclusions. So like 4 main messages. So NMF can efficiently unmix composite data in imaging problem and other types of problems. We propose application-specific variants that kind of augment the plain NMF model to really adapt to the specificity of the problems, the imaging problems we looked at. The beta divergence is interesting because you can adapt to the statistic of the noise, either using cross-validation, interpolation, or given label data. And majorization minimization works very well in this setting. You can obtain workable algorithms with linear complexity per iteration. It's very easy to implement, no hyperparameter to tune. And for the postdoc positions, so I will soon announce 3 positions. So there's one position about multi-data processing for multimedia artistic creation with a colleague from IRIT who works on text information retrieval. So the idea is to mix, to analyze multimodal text and image data with some artistic application I can tell you about after the talk. We have a position about learning with low-rank models with Emmanuel Soubies with Charlie Rocher CNRS, who just joined our group. And there's a position about Bayesian deep learning with my colleague Nicolas de Bijon. And last but not least, I also want to advertise the sparse workshop, which we are very proud to host in Toulouse in July, and we have a very nice set of plenary speakers. I know that some of you have submitted papers in the room, and I hope there will be even more to be present at the conference. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Are there some questions?
In the MNF algorithm, multiplicative algorithm, how difficult is to choose the value of gamma?
Oh, it's given to you by the MM approach. Mm-hmm. It's not something you choose. This gamma here?
Yes.
So it's not something you choose. It's a gamma that is given to you from the MM algorithm.
And another one was in the regularization path, how to select lambda.
All right, yeah, I
Very-
didn't mention that. That's the usual problem. I think that in that case, I don't remember the specific values we chose, but for the real data applications, I think my colleagues tried several values of lambda and chose one, I don't remember how.
Another question? Yes. Wait, please, for the micro.
Thank you. Nice talk. So my question is for the unmixing application. It's not very clear to me that there is a unique way to write a non-negative matrix as a product of two negative matrices.
That's
so
a good point.
what conditions are you aware of
So-
to ensure that you can recover some signal?
So this is still very much an open problem as well. So it's actually very connected to analyzing the landscape of the global solutions in these problems, because this is what is going to tell you what are the possible indeterminacies between the different solutions. And it's very much an open problem.
Another question? No other question? So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.